I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast. This episode is titled The Elite Mindset. Today's episode is an interview with Dave and Lauren Regula and a little bit about them. Lauren Bay-Regula is a performance, mindset, and health coach for professional women and moms. She's a mom of 3, wife to Dave, co-business owner of TrAk Athletics. Lauren is also a 2-time Olympian for the Canadian women's softball team in 2004 and 2008, so she really knows the meaning of hard work. She's a left-handed pitcher who's been exposed to some of the best training programs, nutritionists, and mental performance coaches, and incorporates what she has learned into her mission at TrAk Athletics, and more specifically into what she has launched as the Strong Moms Movement. In 2016, with 3 kiddos aged 7, 5, and 4, Lauren came out of retirement and pitched for Team Canada in the World Championships, earning a bronze medal. And now, in 2021, at almost 40 years old, she's heading to her 3rd Olympics. Growing up in Akron, Dave developed an early love of competition and coaching. He went on to become a 3-time All-Ivy League football player, as well as Ivy League record holder. From Dartmouth, Dave went to the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade, where he traded options on short-term interest rates for 16 years. His time spent in the pressure cooker of the trading floor gives him a unique perspective on maximizing health and career at the same time. He believes that individual attention and education about training, nutrition, and lifestyle are the keys to implementing sustainable changes in his clients, whether they're an athlete, a business owner, or a parent.
Yeah, they were a really amazing couple to speak with, and we certainly learned a lot during this conversation. We hope you do as well. Here's a few elements that are coming up in this conversation to listen for. We talk about the mental game as opposed to the physical game, how age and experience go along with the world of competition, changing careers and inviting your family to move along with you to a different state, supporting your spouse as they pursue their dreams, date nights and planning, depression, perseverance, community, and coaching, and the role that people who surround you can play in helping you achieve your best, being the parents of children who are involved in athletics, health and wellness, and even the topic of mom guilt. So as you can tell, we cover a lot of ground in this conversation, and we hope you enjoy it. And as always, stick around afterwards for a few of our thoughts and lessons learned from this amazing couple.
All right. Well, welcome to the Relentless Pursuit podcast. We're honored to have both of you, Lauren and Dave, here join us today. And there is a lot that we would love to get into. I don't even know if we'll be able to do justice to all of the different areas that we feel like we can learn from you in. But I think that there's definitely a few obviously like some highlights and some core things you guys are working on that would be just really interesting to dive into. So we're looking forward to, we're grateful to have you on the show. Looking forward to being able to speak with you right now.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, do it.
All right. So we could talk about parenting. We could talk about marriage. I know your anniversary was yesterday.
Oh, happy anniversary.
14 years and 3 kids later. Not to mention starting your own business, kind of shifting from, Dave, what your job was to what it is now. And even that has pivoted in the last year because of 2020. But, when you're talking to a 2-time, almost 3-time Olympian, I feel like maybe we should start there.
It won't be the first time.
Although, Dave, you are quite an athlete yourself. And so when I was reading, your bio about like where you've played and what you've done, you just haven't been to the Olympics.
No, it's weak. I get it. I would lead off with Lauren too.
All right, Jordan, you ready to dive right in?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we're really most curious about is just being an athlete at that level, at the Olympic level. It's unique. A very small percentage of athletes really compete at the level that you're at. So we're curious about just like what it kind of takes to prepare and maintain skills at that level, and especially curious about maybe how that's evolved over the years for you.
Yeah, for sure. So, talent, and I will be the first to say, I tell parents all the time, you can have the best work ethic in the world, but you also need the talent. So as I kept getting up further and further, the talent level continued to rise. And so I say that because I think a lot of parents think that they can just put, kids will put in 10,000 hours and they're going to be a professional. And there's a genetic component 100%. But once you get to, an Olympic tryout and the Olympic stage, it's all small differentiators. You're not going to outwork someone at the Olympics. That's just not going to happen. Everyone is working really hard. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to stand on that podium. So it's turned into more of the mental game, right? You can have people who have the most amazing talent, but they don't know how to handle themselves in certain situations. And that's going to be the biggest differentiator once you hit that level. But I did want to make it really clear, as much as I wish I could say it's all hard work, you have to have, a genetic disposition to be good at your sport. You have to be fast, or you have to, whatever it may be. But the ability to handle pressure is going to be the separator once you're up there.
You come from a pretty athletic family, right? You have a brother that played in the MLB, right?
Yeah, my brother, his name's Jason Bay. So he played for over 10 years. Yep. Major League Baseball for a few teams.
That's so cool.
Nice.
I mean,
Also, great uncle.
He was a two-time, we qualified for 3 Olympics, but had an Achilles problem, but he was a 2-time Olympian decathlete for Canada as well.
Wow.
And then Greg, you're an athlete. You've played at like high levels. Like, are your kids, are they like super athlete? This is like superheroes breed, and then they like breed children that are superheroes. Is this like, are your kids pretty athletic? Or do they play chess and, Fortnite all day?
They're kind of into sports. We're certainly not pressing it.
Okay.
They're as into sports as their friends are. I think at the end of the day, they just want to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
They have moments where you're like, oh, wow, that was pretty good. But then they have moments where you just want to yell at them because they're not paying attention or they're being 10.
I think one thing that's happened, and I hope you don't mind, I just jump in with this. One thing that's happened of being at a very high level sport, the highest level of sport, I'm hyper aware of one, what it takes to get there, but 2, what that journey looks like. So if anything, we're way hands off on when it comes to, hey kids, what do you want to do? We're huge believers in pick a sport, a different sport. Now, what do you want to play? Now, what do you want to play? Now, what do you want to play? And we really try and really hang back, because at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to want to stick and do it. And we want them to be kids. We want them to have fun, and we want them to find something that they really love. Our daughter does not like softball at all. And I'm like, cool, what do you want to do? Put whatever you want to do, let's try it and move on. So I think we're really, really hyper aware of making sure we don't push them there. Our oldest is 11.
I think people forget that journey, like from Lauren's, when she started playing until when she got the Olympics, that's a long journey. And I think parents a lot of times forget, they think you need to win the race in the 1-year race or the 2-year race, or I need to be the best 10th grade or whatever that is. That's not getting you anywhere near these levels of even a college athlete. So like, keep your kid just playing the thing, like whatever it is. If you put so much pressure on them that they're not going to make it through 4th grade, like, right? I mean, we see it all the time. We just coached a basketball game, again, a 4th grade game on a Sunday morning where the opposite coach got kicked out.
For yelling, 4th grade.
And we've seen that a lot, and it's definitely intense.
Yeah, I made the mistake, and Rosanna thankfully corrected me when our oldest was relatively little, maybe 5 or 6. I grew up playing soccer, and I made it pretty well to like the 8th grade level. So, but that was like my sport growing up, and so I just imagined like, oh, when I have kids, like that's going to be their sport. So we signed him up for soccer, got him onto like this travel team, and I thought he loved it until Rosanna pointed out, like, he's really lukewarm to this. And what if we let him try other things? I'm like, other sports? Like that's a really weird idea, but I suppose we could go with it. But looking back, it makes total sense. There's somebody totally different. Let them explore it, and they'll latch on to what they latch on to. And then I feel like as a parent, that's where you double down when you see those natural inclinations.
I think you nailed it there. You said they're a different person. Like, that's such a leap in parenting from, like, I think that differentiator right there amongst parents is huge. Like, there's very few parents that we have found can make that realization. And that's huge to us.
Yeah,
it's not easy either. Like, I think I felt the same way you did at some point, but eventually it hits you and you're like, oh man, they're little people on their own.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and that shift from what we want for our kids to what they want for themselves. And then obviously we just want what's best. And so you play sports to learn sportsmanship, and you learn how to lose, and you get some exercise and you have some fun, but you know, it is what it is. But Lauren, let's get back to you. You've been to 2 Olympics, once right before you were married. So it was in 2004. Then you went again in 2008. And then by then you were married to Dave, and now it's 2021. So the Olympics should have been last year. So there's been a long gap in the last time that you went. And since then you've had 3 kids, and you are 40, you're 40, correct?
I'll be 40 this year.
You'll be 40. Okay.
Yeah, that is so slow down. She's
All right.
Yeah.
Slow down. So you're gonna be 40. So to me, that's amazing, because you're playing with who, like your team is comprised of, how old are the players on the team, and where are they, what stage are they in life, and they want you. Like,
Yeah, it's wild. We have all stages. We have young kids who biologically I could be their mother. Just I think I'm 16 years older than our youngest on our team. And then we also have another woman who's a pitcher who has 2 girls, which is rare enough to have, you know, someone that has kids on an Olympic team or doing an Olympic sport. And we have 2. And we have an older team in terms of they've played for a long time. A lot of people in their upper 20s, lower 30s, which is for softball, it's a long time to play. But it's been a very interesting evolution. When I look back at the player that I was and the way I trained, I just like to tell people I'm just a lot smarter. Instead, I don't necessarily train harder, I just train smarter. But that's where it comes back to the mentality. The mental game has come so far in athletics and in everything really. But I watch a lot of film, and we do a ton of visualization, and that's not hard on my body. And for me, coming back at almost 40 with 3 kids, I mean, talk about living a dream. It's what I want to picture. So I happily will go to bed at night thinking about, you know, curveball to a lefty, because that's play for me. That's fun. And that's really allowed me to kind of let my body rest and not have to work harder per se.
Yeah, I want to explore like the mental game a little bit more, because I feel, you know, when you mentioned that, I think it makes sense. And I see this in athletes all the time, where it's a high pressure situation. And once that situation resolves, and you see some of the relief like come to those athletes, but they're like so tuned into those moments. So like what you mentioned a little bit about how you kind of train mentally, but walk us through a little bit more like how that relates to like your peak performance and kind of separates maybe one player or one team from the next.
Well, I can tell you what I'm doing now, and I'll say I'm fortunate where I am now. I only know what I know, but I have been in 2 games in 2004 and 2008. I had 2 games where it was bottom of the 7th, none out. One was bottom of the 8th in extra innings. None out, bases loaded, I'm pitching, we're up 1-0. Winner has advances to medal round, or has an opportunity at least. And so a lot of my mental workings when I think of the game, I've been in those situations. So that's something that I can pull off of experience. We did get out of both those situations and won 1-0, and we won 1-0. But I put myself in those pressure situations. I can feel sometimes, you know, my hands like having an actual visceral reaction. And then the other part of that is, after being gone for so long, I mean, I hadn't stepped on a field for 8 years when I came back in 2016. I was more nervous because I hadn't done it for 8 years. And so I also pull off of that emotion that I had, and I try and tie them together. And I really, you want to think of your highlight reel, right? You think about how great things are going to go. I don't want to sit there and imagine, you know, going out to an Olympic Games and really kind of crap in the bed, so to speak. So I really imagine a highlight reel, but I've been in situations that weren't the best, like bases loaded, none out. So I just try and pull from those. We do a ton of reading. We do a ton of straight up visualization, and they come from our coaches. They come from ourselves. It comes from previous games. We spend a lot of time really just putting ourselves in those situations.
You spend a lot of time studying other experts.
Yep.
And other, like, it's not the mentality that I'll jump
Talk
in.
in.
The things that she's talking about apply to every, like you can picture public speaking. If you're giving a presentation when it matters, like you're going to visualize that moment. You're going to draw on something you've done in the past, some evidence to give you some confidence there. It's the same practices. So I get lucky because I steal into, the coaching that they're getting, but I don't know if you're familiar with Masterclass. And so Lauren just crushed through 15 different Masterclass episodes of, Serena, and not just athletes, but
Poker players,
astronauts, all
Mhm.
of these different things, because the elite mindset is the elite mindset. It carries across all disciplines and domains. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I don't know if we often articulate it like that. I mean, we think of like you kind of like working on fundamentals and like how hard the physical work has to be, or like even if you're giving a speech, like how much practice like needs to go into it, or how much experience that you can. But to be able to like train your mind and thinking of the exercises that you can do for your mind, like you might for your body as well, I think is really powerful. But maybe not something that we haven't considered or put into practice.
I didn't consider that at all, because I was going to be like, how many push-ups does she do a day? Like what protein powder is she using? Like, you think of all of these things that, how much broccoli are you eating, like to get prepped. But yeah, that the mindset is key, which then transfers into everything that you're doing, probably parenting and entrepreneurship and marriage. And it's the same. It's just a different game. So softball is your Olympic game, but you've got a bunch of other games you're playing too that it transfers to.
No, that's exactly how we can. Whenever I have a really amazing session or whatever it may be, we talk about it, and then we talk about how we can apply that to our life. Like Dave and I, we're making our vision board. We do something called a health map, a wealth map, in terms of what we want our life to look like. I take all of these lessons and we use them in our everyday life.
Which is great. When you're competing in the Olympics, it means you represent a nation. For you, you're representing Canada. That's where you were born. That's where you grew up, even though you live in the US now. Is there anything else that you feel like you represent when you're out there besides Team Canada?
So this journey, I had 3 kids, and we had 3 kids in 3 years. And I experienced a really long kind of bout with depression afterwards. And so I also created Strong Mom because of this. I feel like I'm representing moms, and I am hoping that I'm representing hope, to go from feeling hopeless and feeling like I couldn't do anything and I had nothing really that was lighting me up, and I was really struggling, to now coming to a place where I'm, training and doing something I'm dreaming really big. I really look at it like I'm trying to represent moms and to show that we can do things too, and we can have it all. We can do more than we think we can. We just have to put in the work, and we have to put in the want and the work.
Dave, what is this like for you? You're obviously married to Lauren, so she's got, she's got to train, she's got to prep, she's got to get ready. She's going to leave, and you are going to kind of. So what is your role in all of this? How do you feel about it?
What does that balance of a family look like, to kind of when at certain points when one is pursuing like one particular goal or another, and especially like over the next few months?
I would say that dynamic has changed over time a lot. We've gone through really tough patches with that balance, in being afraid of what could happen being away and things like that. But now, once it's back to a little bit to the mindset type of work and envisioning like, okay, this is an opportunity versus this is going to be tough. Because however you picture it, that's how it's going to be. And for us at this point, for me, it's just normal. Like they're already talking about pushing 2021 back, or it's just a little bit up in the air. And we talked about it the other day. And like, for me, like, just keep playing. I don't care. Like, we can do this forever. Like, it's become, almost routine, and it's enjoyable. Because for me personally, as an ex-athlete, like, I just love being around the team as much as anything. Like, I love the girls and the mindset. Like, we go down to Florida State, and I get to stay up and pick the brain of the national championship softball coach, who's, it's just, she's on another level. So on that on that point, it's fun, but it's also great seeing Lauren, like watching your spouse like over the moon for years at a time is, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Were there ever times, Lauren, where you got the opportunity, they approached you and said, all right, we want you on the team. And in your mind, as just like a wife and a mother, you're like, I can't go. I can't do this.
Yeah, actually, I want to explore this because like you've talked about this before, and I don't know to what extent this is a thing, but like, I think you've called it the mom guilt. So, I mean, is that
very real thing?
Very real. So I came back in 2016. That was, and I didn't know if I could do it. I struggled mentally in terms of, I felt very guilty. I felt very selfish. I had to work through that. And then I was supposed to play in 2019, but just situationally, we had, I was awaiting the BRCA test. My family has it. My dad has it. And so I didn't get the news on whether I had that gene or not, which would have completely changed the directory of my life at that point. So I opted out to play that year because it took me 4 months to get my results. But I didn't say no because I felt selfish. What I've generally done is said yes and worked through those feelings, if that makes sense. Dave has been the person who has helped me say yes. In 2016, I was like, absolutely not. I had an email queued up before I think I even read the whole official email asking if I would consider coming back. I was already typing up like, oh, that's so funny. Thanks, but no thanks. And it was Dave that was the one that said like, shut your computer. And
I think that was this time too.
I don't know about this
time. 2018 for sure.
Yeah. I would not. Here's the funny thing.
It was mom guilt. Like,
wife guilt, mom guilt, guilt, just you name it. It was just guilt from all angle. Business guilt. I think
a lot of it is it's not normal. If you don't grow up in a situation, like if your parents are both around, right? You normally would hear a story about, oh, my dad travels for work, he's never around. Like it's always those stories with the negative light, right? And so when you're put in that position to be that person that you've only heard negative stories about, I think you're like, oh shit, I don't want to be that person. And so I think your guilt is natural. It was still misplaced in my opinion. It made sense at the time, but like once it takes work to work through it, but once you release it, and then you stop looking, like it's like anxiety, right? If you focus on the negative, you're going to feel terrible, whether it's guilt, whether it's anxiety, whatever. But as soon as you look at it as an opportunity, and these are amazing things that are going to come out of it, then it's all fun. Like you just, like Lauren said, you make it happen. You can build your life around greatness instead of worry. So.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you guys don't have a typical routine or a typical story that like most of probably your neighbors have, or the people that you grew up with, or like, right, your kids' friends' parents. And so sometimes I think we let those narratives of like, well, this is what normal people do, or this is what's expected, keep us from saying, well, maybe we don't fit that mold, and maybe that's okay.
Yeah, well, plenty of people have supported me, but I've gotten also oh my gosh, how could you leave your family? Or, oh gosh, I could never leave my family. In a way,
it's always, that's going to be so tough.
Oh God, it's gonna be so hard. Oh, how can how is it going to be possible? And so I let some of that stuff really stop me and go, oh my gosh, I went to a therapist appointment and asked if I was screwing up I'm like, am I going to screw up my kids? Are they going to think I'm abandoning them? I had those feelings, but Dave said it perfectly. You hit this wall and you either break through it and you grapple with the kind of wrestle with the guilt and realize it doesn't serve you. And I remember Dave said to me, he said, you know what, I want to use this time to learn too. I'm going to take some courses. I'm going to do things when you're gone. And so we can grow together. And we really turned it into the positive and looking at it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from that because, like we've talked about that too, with like, just like work and careers and business, and like to what extent you specifically were saying like are feeling comfortable like committing to that versus having, playing a bigger role with the kids, especially that they're young. And so it sounds like you guys have had a lot of conversations kind of surrounding like how to really like lean into those opportunities.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, and we
No,
talk
it's
about on this, how can we sit there and tell our kids, like, go pursue your dreams, you can do anything, and not do it ourselves?
And I'll call you from the cube.
I'll call you from a place that's why essentially we picked up and left and started our own businesses. We want to just show our kids that you can do it. And if we're going to tell our kids, and that's really what we believe, then we have to live that. We want to live that.
Yeah. Dave, you were a trader in Chicago for 15 years. Okay. And you guys are friends with people that we've interviewed earlier this season, Greg and Shannon. And so they said that that's where you guys had met and that's how you guys know each other. But you let go of a lucrative financial opportunity, like a great job. You guys were comfortable. You were in a city that you loved, and then you left. Tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, because that's big too. I mean, the Olympics are big, but like transitioning from, what you have to something greater, but there's a lot of risk there. So, I mean.
Yeah, change is hard. It was a really tough time, I think, for our family. Actually, like that was a career that I went straight from college down to the trading floor at the Mercantile Exchange in like 98 and fell in love with it. I played football in college, so it was competitive and lucrative, like you said, and just the same environment that I had been around my whole life, a ton of ex-athletes. And I fell in with a really quality company that focused on family. So that down there, and especially you guys from Chicago, you probably heard stories or know somebody that knows somebody from the floor. It's not a normal working atmosphere, right? Like at all. I'm probably changed as a human being from that experience. Like my sense of humor is certainly far off on the edge of what's acceptable. And so I loved it. But probably 13 years in, like trading changed and I had kids and we lived in the city with the kids. We had 3 kids and trading slowed down. And a lot of it became like, do I want to be here? And as soon as that question creeps in and you're not prepared to answer it, it started to get dark. And a lot of people on the floor at the time were electronic trading was coming in. And a lot of people were talking about like, well, this sucks. I don't want to trade in a computer. I don't want to be here. And I think for me, I started to have those moments where I'm like, I got to that age where people's kids were starting to come work on the floor. I'm like, this is just for me. I don't want my kids anywhere near this place. And so that was like a light bulb moment where like, oh man, we got to think about this. And then it was the fitness thing, which we had already been involved in a gym in Chicago. We were co-owners of a gym in starting 2007. And so that became like, it wasn't a side hustle. It was just passion. We didn't need money from it, but it was like, I loved it and we loved it. And Lauren's an athlete and I was an athlete. So it started to shift into that. And then it was like, why don't we just at least It wasn't, why don't we, it was for me, because I had the conversation in my own head. Why don't I just open a gym and do what I love? And then it turned into, and some people might recognize this, it wasn't as much that I wanted to do that. It was a fear of me it's not leaving trading. So it was more like, I just remember walking through downtown Chicago we'd get out, off the floor 3, traffic's crazy. There's a zillion people. It's the rat race. And you always get close to getting hit by a bus, like if the bus, and I remember literally saying out loud, like, if I get hit by a bus and I never leave this place, like I suck. Like, I pray that a cab just runs the rest of me over and just ends it. So I don't have to live with those moments of never feeling like I did something. Right. And so it was just kind of like, you know what, we're out. And we didn't know where to go, but we put our house up for sale. Wow. And that was when the house would sell for cash in 48 hours that we weren't ready for. Like, oh no. And so we ended up moving back to Ohio. We didn't really work for a year. We had to build the gym out and do that stuff, but it was certainly a situation where we needed to make a career and a living out of the next thing. And so it became our gym. And that was where Lauren was supportive, sorry, about everything. Like, I don't think she knew what she was getting into. And I certainly didn't. It's one thing to manage like a trading account, which is like very focused. Like, knowing everything about a very minute sliver of the world serves a purpose. But once you move away from that sliver and into something different, I was like, oh man, I thought I knew more about this. And so it was a little stressful at the beginning, but it's a really long way to say we made it work.
But it's funny because if you knew how much you didn't know, you probably would have never left.
It's you know, what's crazy is that we got very close to opening a second location, which would have been a problem during COVID. It was probably a year before, it was like in 2019. And like, we've had conversations, well, should we go and do that again? And it was like, the amount of effort and knowledge and stress and struggle to open one place, it's like, no, we will never. Which is honestly one of the reasons we love the online coaching, because it's like, we can just do it. We can do the part we love. We don't have to do that heavy lifting to get it.
So I want to like kind of walk back to Chicago a little bit. Like, walk us through that conversation of, you know, where I'm sure there's many conversations, but of leaving my job. And you said you weren't even sure at the time, like what the next step was. Like how does that go for you guys when you are talking through, like, here's the next step, and this is more than a dream. This is like really going to be the next reality for us.
To be honest, I don't really remember. Like, I really, it was such a crazy time in our life. I like looking back, knowing that depression was such a big part of Lauren's life, but it literally never, like, it wasn't acknowledged until kind of more recently. Like, our kids were 4, 3, and 1 or something. And it wasn't there. I would say there were probably arguments more than they were conversations at that point. That was a hard time. And I think the gym thing was like the most obvious thing, because we were both passionate about fitness and coaching, and the business side of it excited me. Do you remember how it went?
No, I do remember you being miserable. And I was like, yeah, if you're miserable, let's go. Like, I don't want you to be miserable.
Yeah, I got to that point, you know, where like my alarm would go off, snooze. Like, it sounds cliche, but that's literally what happened. Snooze, showing up later, caring less. And like, that's a job, unfortunately, that I didn't need to, at that point, I didn't need to think very much. Like, I could do it like literally in my sleep. Like, I would dream trading at night. Like, it just was part of my fabric at that point. So it was like, I could have just hidden out, you know what I mean? But I worked with people I loved. And so I felt inauthentic. And that, honestly, that forced my hand a little bit. Cause like, even I remember one of my good friends, like, why don't you stay until next summer and the gym will be up and running? I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this to you guys. Like, it's not fair to anybody. And so that was a big part of it, I think.
I think it's interesting because, you know, sometimes it's hard to leave the sure thing, you know, especially like, you know, if you got insurance, and if you're, you know, that's your income, you know?
Yeah.
And so to kind of go out on that limb, like I always admire that. And I think, I mean, you are obviously not alone with that line of thinking of like, I really like wanting to get out of what you're doing and regretting your future self had you stayed. So like, what would you say to someone like in that, who has kind of like the comfortable but unsatisfying sure thing, but maybe has a vision or an idea for something else that they could do, even if it's risky or a little crazy?
We'll probably have 2 different answers.
No, I think it's,
we want to hear both.
no, having done it, it's interesting. And I've thought a lot about this, because you met or talked with Greg and Shannon. Greg stayed, right? Greg was my trading partner. And I've asked myself, like, how did he manage to get through and stay and enjoy it? And I didn't. And so there's part of me that was like, that was definitely not the right thing for me at that time. But there's part of me that's always like, well, what if I would have worked on myself a little bit more? Was I the problem, or was the occupation the problem? And I still don't know where I sit necessarily with it. But looking back, I would say that it depends on the person, right? So if I clean walked away, which is a pretty drastic break, but I think there are situations where if it's not a huge difference, like if I would have just been an online coach, I could have stayed and kind of side hustled it until one got to a point where I felt safe leaving, which I think is, to be honest, is a good move depending on where you're at. But if it's something totally different, like the burn the boats it certainly forces you to figure things out. Right. It was scary as all hell when we touched down in Ohio, and that was my moment. Like I lost a ton of weight. I couldn't, because we had a place to put our gym, and then all of a sudden the lease fell through, and we're like, we don't have work. We have nowhere to put our dream business. And so I started to run those, like, that was like anxiety 101. Like every negative outcome ruminated all day long for weeks. And it was really hard to break out of that. To be honest, it was hard. It was a hard time.
But you made it. We made it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then I look back now and I'm like, knowing, it's like when Lauren talks about mindset, if I would have known then how to handle it and train my brain, it would have been, in one ear out the other, and we could have moved right through it. But I think at the time it's easy to get sucked in, right? Because everything seems so much bigger at the time, right? It starts with prom. Prom's the biggest night of your life. and then you have your kids, and this is the biggest. Until their next birthday, right? Like it's, as humans, I think that's what we do.
But I would say, I think the lessons that I've struggled, but I also was going through I was just not doing well myself. If someone I like the idea of getting something up and running, while you still have something, that whole insurance thing, the amount of times I'm like, I don't have insurance. That's come up a lot, and just we have no income. When we started, we didn't have a clue. And so what I would say, and what I've learned, is your life is going to be like, everything's the best, everything's the worst, everything's the best. And I think I had this expectation that it was just going to be a linear line of, we're not great, but it's going to get better, and it just would keep compounding to get better. So there has to be a realistic, and you don't know what you don't know. We didn't know. I didn't know. But I think knowing that you're going to go from on top of the world to the bottom of the barrel, because
that's like every entrepreneurial meme ever is that,
and it's
graph,
real,
right?
It's very real.
Yeah, you love what you're doing when you're doing it, and then something falls out. And so then you're like, this sucks. And then you're like, yeah, this is great. And I love what I do. I love what I do. Yeah. Oh, this sucks. Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever.
So that's why it's good to, I picturing like just either like you're in one tree and you want to get to the next tree. Do you like grab a branch here and then you swing like to the next branch and then you can safely get across? Or do you just jump from one to the other and hope that you make it? So
it's crazy. I think honestly, the thing that we have learned to do a lot better is to kind of box up that business part of it and have these other aspects of our life. Like when that's all you're focusing on, then you live and die with the swings in the business. But when you learn that, we have kids, I mean, that, but it's hard when you're scared about your future, you lock on to that thing, right? That's going to feed your family. But now it's more like, well, shit, if we're getting along great, everything's going to be fine, right? Then the kids are going to feed off of us. Then the family's going to be great. Well, if we're feeling great, then we're going to produce in business and coach even better. Oh, okay. So we've totally kind of rearranged our thinking, I think, with that.
Well, I think what's interesting is, you graduate from college in whatever your degree or your field is, and you kind of grow up thinking that like everything is going to be just as it is like at that moment, and that you're going to do it forever, and that you're going to feel fulfilled, and that it's going to be fine. And then you find your person, and then you get married, and you have kids, and it's great.
There's a script.
People, right. And people look at you guys, I'm sure, and think, oh, wow, like moved, own their own business. They have kids. She's going to the Olympics. Like, gosh, it's great all the time. And you don't realize that through all of that, you're constantly changing and you're constantly growing. We were married 14 years ago, almost 15, and we're not the same people that we were when we were kids. But it's when we are like together and we're in it together and we're working together and our eyes are going in the same direction, like it doesn't matter what's falling out, like we just keep going. And so it's just interesting to see more and more couples, like even if things change, even if things shift, even if you want to jump ship and start something new, you can. You don't have to, be glued to the position that you're in. So that's really cool.
So I wanted to ask this question because I think it pertains to a lot of what you guys are doing. I think about peak performance, like for athletes or in sports. It's all like it's very easily quantified. You can, you have games, you keep scoring, if you win or lose, and there's so many statistics about anything related to sports, and you can be in the gym and you can lift your max and you count your reps, and so there's kind of this notion that you can improve and you can count and you can compete because there's so many like numbers involved. But what about like the less quantifiable portions of our lives? Is there like a notion of like peak performance or your max or something in relation to your marriage or to your parenting or to those more like relational aspects?
I have a thought on that. I think it's harder to quantify, but in terms of marriage, one thing that I would say, at least that rings true for us on knowing that it's better, is our ability to communicate what we're really feeling versus what we think the other person wants to hear, and to do it in a timely manner, as opposed to 4 days later, which has happened, right? Get mad about something, wrestle with if I should be mad at it or not say anything. 4 days later, one little thing happens and it blows up because of, and I think
we have no idea what that's like.
Yeah, tell us more.
Wait, what?
What? So, I'm only saying that because in terms of our marriage and our relationship, the more at peace I feel, I would consider that bar going up in terms of success and our communication. And we have had really tough conversations where maybe the other person wasn't feeling so great, but we know the intention is to make our marriage better. And it's always come out the other side where that conversation just opened up more doors for us to have more conversations. Like Dave knows me more than he ever has. Mm-hmm. So that would be my thing on marriage.
I think we're super intentional on, like, we have very detailed discussions about how we want our marriage to be, from top to bottom, from travels to the bed to the whatever, the dinner table, everywhere. And I don't know, that's kind of new for us. We haven't met many people who dig into that level of detail. And I think it matters. It's no different than, like, I personally don't think that you're going to experience something almost ever that hasn't crossed your mind before it happens, right? You're not going to walk into this unbelievable situation, whether, it's work. For me, like trading, same, like I spent all my time thinking about it and the outcome that I wanted. Whether it's sports, you envision the game, like you need to do these things and be intentional with the kind of kids you want to grow up in your house, or what you want your marriage to be. Like, you have to spend time, in my mind, on these things.
So how do you make that happen? Do you have like a set time where you're like, all right, it's conversation time? Do you have like charts or contracts, or, and I've heard of all kinds of different variations, but I'm curious, like, how do you make time to make sure that happens?
You want me?
Go for it.
We do.
I want to know if you're going to say what I'm going to say.
Every
Sunday, if you write it down at the same time. And then
we have a bunch of different things. Every Sunday we sit down, we do our weekly plan, what's important to us. We put all of the things that matter to us on the table in terms of when is date night. That's a non-negotiable for us. Also, these things, we'll write down the things we want to discuss. If there's anything that's needs to be talked about, it's out on the table.
So is this like literally at a table, like,
Yep.
pen and paper?
You'd be on the couch.
Dave prefers the couch. I prefer a table.
Just in general. I would eat dinner at the couch if it were outside.
And then the other thing is we have something called the cheat codes. It's our cheat codes for what we need from each other, and we review our cheat codes. So there's a physical part, a mental part, there's whatever, but it's really our non-negotiables of what would make us the happiest.
It's typically what we see is all the things that you wouldn't normally talk about. Like for me, one of the things just to kick it was like, when I have a big idea that I've just come up with, I need you to shut up and just listen to it before you tell me that it's bad or that there's anything at all wrong with you.
Why are you laughing like you know what he's talking about?
I don't know.
You just need to stop talking for a few minutes and let me talk. Like, it might suck and I might admit it, but you just need to shut up. That's one of the things. Without doing this actual exercise, like doing an exercise like this opens the floor to literally anything. Like, I like sex in the morning. I like sex at night. Well, you never talk about that unless you have a forum or a safe space to do it. This gives you that safe space. You might still not agree on anything, but
No, but like on the flip side, I ask him not to solve my problems. I say, I just want you to listen. I don't want you to fix it.
it's hard when you have solutions for everything, right?
Right.
But,
Like, why am I here?
but we have about 5 or 6 non-negotiables, and that would be something where he would be like, again, this is what I need from you. And I know exactly what he's talking about because we just revamped our cheat codes. And it's all encompassing of, what matters to us. And we do have those conversations.
What's an example of a non-negotiable, if you don't mind sharing, like one of those?
What he said of like, I'm not allowed to, he has these great ideas and I'll be like, well, that wouldn't make sense because of this. But just for example,
Yeah, like the cheat codes in general, like, so we'll have probably like 8 or 10 each, but they're kind of non-negotiable like that. Once I put that out there, there's no reason. You don't really you have a choice, but if we want to have the best relationship going, like, you're going to pay attention to my cheat codes and I'm going to listen to yours, because I know if I do those foundational things,
we're good.
She's really kind of going to be happier. So I'm an ass basically if I don't follow it.
But on both of our cheat codes was, date night is a non-negotiable for both of us. So we want that, end of story.
Exercise.
Working out, training one time a week together. We would normally do it more, but with my training, it's hard. But that's
in general, that's another one that we see kind of tripping people up. It's tripped us up in the past. But like for me, if Lauren gets cranky, like, get out of here, go work out. Like, it's a forced, like, we don't miss those exercise points. You know what I mean? Like, just last night or 2 nights ago, you wanted to run, but dinner needed, like, I will do anything around the house to give her a chance to just go work out. Like, everyone wins every time. Like, it's without fail. That's a big one.
Well, but I like even the things that you're saying, because it's not that you're holding hands all the time. Like, you're being your own person, you're doing your own thing. It's what you need, it's what she needs. And it makes you guys both better individually and as a couple, where it's not a series of skipping around together, doing it all together all the time.
I think I'm totally jumped. Lauren,
What?
I don't know if I can stink eye, but I think we're both 100%. There's no splitting anything, right? Like, I believe that we can both do everything that we want to do. We don't have to be together. Like, I'll be happiest if I'm pushing 100% for her to be her best, and she does the same for me. There's no like it's not a sacrifice. Like, I don't look at anything that I do as like you playing. I don't look at that as a sacrifice at all.
Yeah. So for example, and this came from my team, and this is what's so awesome. I said, oh, Dave, I just got this awesome email, and it was about our team talking about, yes, we have to sacrifice with people consider things sacrifices on being in your bubble and being careful for the team, but really it's a decision. And we're looking at this like, I'm making this decision because this is what matters to me. So we make decisions that are for each other, wanting each other to be their best. It's the most attractive. Dave's really attractive when he's doing his thing. And I know the same thing is the opposite. When I'm out doing my thing, it's instead of, keeping score, it's what do you want to do and how can we make that happen?
It's also, like you mentioned, it's the exact same thing, I think, like you mentioned with the kids. Like, they're not you. Lauren's not me. Like, I have to give her if you really love someone, you're going to give them every bit of opportunity to max out their own life, right? Like, if your spouse comes to you and is like, I genuinely, truly want to do something, like, for me, obviously it's within some sort of reason, but like, why would I not support that? It's kind of blows my mind, because unfortunately we run across people too often that with the most basic things.
Get little support.
They get very little support from their spouse.
Yeah. It sounds like too, and at least this has been the case for us sometimes, where one of us like maybe shows like a small interest in something, or like, oh, I wish that, I could do this, or this could happen. And they're not even thinking that it would be a reality, but then the other one of us becomes the one to kind of like almost force their hand and say like, no, like now you are now going to do this. You're now going to engage this, and I'm going to make the space for this to happen too. So I feel like sometimes I'm not even asking for something, but you've been really great with like just trying to push and to make sure that I do get a chance to do it. It's almost like I'm then like ordered to do it.
Well, we'll make up our own excuses as to why we wouldn't do something, but someone else
Right, chicken
will push
out
us
or
to-
make an
yeah.
excuse. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of both of you guys being your very best. Like it's easy to sit and get stuck, right? Keep hitting the snooze button.
Yeah. I'm just real curious, real quick about date nights. How often, where do you go? What does that look like?
We're non-negotiable once a week. And if there is some time that we can't because of whatever reason, which of course comes up, then it's a coffee date. There's some time that's set aside that's Lauren and Dave time.
Yeah, it's typically, it's not real exciting. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's COVID. Our kids tire us out. We're like a 6:30 to 9, just however long to be out of the house until our nanny can put our kids to bed kind of thing.
Right.
Like I would almost buy my way out of just putting the kids to bed, and that would be good. And we typically just go to dinner. We go to like Rock Barnes and Noble once in a while. Poker, right? Like we'll carry out and go in our dining room and lock the doors around us and eat while the family is like around, just we need to be.
Yeah.
So it's not so much as what you do. It's just that you have that time carved out. That's not going through your cheat codes or anything like that. It's just like fun to be together and to laugh and enjoy.
Yeah, we have a rule, no work talk unless it's vision talk of how excited we are about X, but not work, vision about how we are excited about our life, not a program
Logistics,
or whatever we're
yeah.
running.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like The Godfather. You don't talk business at the table. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we've made that mistake. We have that rule for a reason.
We also do,
Never ends well.
we put kids date night. We have family date night too. That is for like, we haven't missed we do typically order out from somewhere, wherever the kids choose, movie. We've added night hikes recently, which has been fun. But that's as important, I think.
Yeah, one thing that Dave and I do during our Sunday planning is we have a very color-coded calendar. So for me, training, owning a business, being a mom, I need to be able to look and be present, because it's really easy to be afraid I'm missing out on my kids if I'm working and then have to go throw or have to practice or whatever. So if I can look at the week in a snapshot, so family time is teal, and Dave and LB time is pink, but I can look at a really quick snapshot. And if I have a really long day that I don't have a lot of teal, I know it's okay, because I have more teal coming up later in the week. When we do our planning, we put down our non-negotiables, and we put down our things that we have to do if we have a meeting set up that we clearly can't miss. Like this was on our calendar first, so we didn't put family time there. But after everything that's set in absolute stone, it goes date night and family time is put in first, and then we fill in the rest of the stuff from there.
Good way to do it. Let's talk a little bit more about your business and how it's pivoted. So you obviously had the gym, you're obviously leading training there. 2020 happens. Around here, gyms were closed for a very long time, and people were, streaming classes in from their gyms or opting for something remote. But you guys did something really cool. And let's talk about like what you guys launched in this last year and what it is and what you're doing and what the mission is.
You want to go?
Sure. So the gym we were shut down here too. And we decided to take the best parts or the most personal parts of what we did in the gym, the one-on-one coaching, and kind of the things that we've been most interested in, the mindset coaching and training and the mental piece, and put that together and coach individuals online. And so now we get to do fitness and nutrition, which for us is, to be honest, a layup. Like, will change the way you look without a doubt, but we get to really get involved in kind of training your mind to automate the process and to make you better for the long term. And really it affects confidence and the way you kind of interact with your kids and your spouse. And so now we run that for people all over the world. Really, we have someone in Europe now.
We have a Strong Mom. So my program's called Strong Mom. It's like the Strong Mom movement. It's based out of coming from depression, being a mom and training and knowing that we can do more, but we just don't give ourselves the same consideration that we would give a family member, right? If our kids wanted to sign up for something, it'd be like, no problem, dude. What do I need to do for you? But oftentimes we don't even give ourselves that consideration. And so we have one of our moms who lives in Switzerland, which is super cool. And it's, the whole goal is just to give tools and support to dream big, do more, and be that example for your kids, the healthy example, the strong example, the confident example. It's what I say all the time is you can't give what you don't have. So as a mom, if you really want to give your children confidence and you want them to have that, you need to have that first before you can give that to them. If you want your children to have healthy habits, if you don't have them, where are they going to get them from? So my whole goal with, at least with moms, and I know he works with the guys, but I just want them to be so much more so they can pass that on to their kids.
Dave, does that look similarly with the guys?
Yeah, it's the guys deal with a little bit different issues. But yeah, it's similar. Guys bury themselves in different things. It's typically in work, achievement kind of based mindsets, and it can also be alcohol and things like that. And so we talk a lot about that, but in bring people's health. It's funny, a lot of ex-athletes wake up and realize that they're nowhere near where they think they are. And not always in a sad or depressed way, but we have a lot of guys in the program that look in the mirror and they're like, oh shit, I totally forgot that I used to be an athlete and be confident and strong. You run into people who are really confident and physical at one point that don't want to take their shirt off when they go to the pool with their kids. And that kind of trickles down. It trickles down into their businesses and it trickles into their families. And so we deal with that. And the one cool thing is that we get to, with Zoom, everything's Zoom now, right? So we do group Zoom calls, and being able to see, like, look on a screen and see, okay, there's 10, there's 20 other guys who are my age, really successful at work and facing the same issues and struggles and challenges. Then you're like, man, this isn't so bad. Like, we're in it together kind of thing. It's like, it's really important. And I think for guys and moms too, it's hard to admit some of these things, right? We all suffer in silence a lot. And so when you open the door to somebody, they're going to walk in. And so we're trying to open the door.
Yeah, one of the things that what was the first that we noticed is on, I think it was your gym webpage, it talked about how there's a correlation between your physical health and these other aspects of life. And I think you've touched upon that a little bit. Can you like explain that a little bit, just like your conception of health and how everything seems like it's interrelated?
Well, your body is going to be your first filter, right? Everyone looks through their own filters at how the world is. Your body is essentially what it is. It's a filter. Does it feel good, right? If you have chronic pain somewhere, you're going to have, a negative thing in your mind, even if you don't want to, because you're in pain, which is never, it's not a good thing every day. So your body is going to be the way you feel inside and the way you feel about yourself is very directly correlated to how we react to things coming at us.
Yeah. Think about being tired as a parent, right? That's the one. Like the thing that your kid does, like, this is for me. I'll use my example. Our 10-year-old will literally just drop something in the kitchen, total accident. If I'm tired and aggravated, I react horribly. Like, it's a snap, like frustration. But if I feel good about myself, I just got done from a workout, everything's great, I laugh. And so just an energy level or a confidence level, like, you basically are projecting what you have inside out onto the way you see the world. That goes right into your marriage. It goes into your job. it's amazing, and it gets overlooked every time, because I think people treat the symptoms and they don't treat the underlying illness. So you might have an issue in your marriage. Like if you had energy, those conversations go differently. You're not fighting as often. They try and fix the fighting. They don't go to the individual and say, well, what if I felt better about myself? How would I be in this situation? And so we see Band-Aids constantly when, like, to be honest, if people would heal themselves, and it's not just physical health, there's some mental pieces obviously with it, but like that's the base foundation for a lot of struggle that people face.
That's a lot to take in, because
in a good way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because there are, I mean, there's innumerable Band-Aids that we use, and just, I think maybe sometimes we lack the ability to maybe even identify or articulate like some of the root things that we're feeling. And so we can cover it up and move on. Or I would even say, like, especially when it comes to health, like for 2020 was thankfully I would say our healthiest year. But I feel, not that I'm old, I mean, I'm 38, but like I finally feel like I cracked the code of like, oh, this is how I have like discipline and, don't gravitate towards the junk all the time. But I feel like sometimes we put ourselves and what we know we need, not what we want, but like what we know we need, at the bottom of our priority list. And then we think we're doing the right thing by putting others ahead of ourselves, trying to meet the needs of our kids or our spouses, or doing a good job at work. And we realize like everything that we like value or need, it hasn't really made the cut in a long time. So like, is that, you could kind of correct my thinking if that's up, but how do you see that?
I see that as spot on, right? I mean, that's literally it. You can't be the best husband if you aren't the best man, right? Like, it's funny. We always ask, would you, if you were in better shape mentally and physically, would that make you a better business owner? And 9 times out of 10 people are like, yeah, but they don't do it, right? And there's always people, the other one, well, no. Well, are you in shape? No. Well, then how do you know? Right? I think you nailed it. Like,
yeah, it's exactly what we're trying to change, the whole selfish to selfless, if me and my sayings, but for moms, I say we got to give our family what's best, the best of us, not what's left of us, because all we do is give. And eventually, here's the thing, if we're not able, we don't feel good, we don't have the energy. And I lived this. I was living in episodes of depression. If I didn't take care of myself, I didn't worry about myself at that point. I just did everything I could to make sure the kids were fine. Maybe if I would have taken that time to make sure I was fine, it would have been short-term pain, but it would have been a lot better in the long run. You can't help someone if you can't help someone. So we're all
putting your oxygen mask on first, right, on the plane.
Exactly.
But also, to be clear, we're not saying you need to be like in Olympic condition. There's a threshold there's like a basic threshold, right, that you need to be able to clear to make these things happen. And then after that, it gets incrementally better. But there's a certain point where, we coach people that there's a huge gap between, like, when they fix these physical pieces, like, the rest of their lives are amplified in the best ways.
Yeah.
I know we're coming towards the end of our time. So do you have any final things that you want to hit?
Oh gosh, I think there's so many. So many good things.
Let's go.
What kind of parents? Well, maybe we'll just do some rapid fire ones. What kind of parents are you on the sideline?
The lightning round.
Are you like the snack parents where you bring all the good snacks back in the days when you can bring a snack? Are you just cheering loudly? I'm assuming you're not the ones getting ejected.
You're not arguing with the ref.
Yeah.
We are the people that sit as far down. If it's soccer, we're on the corner
flag.
On the corner flag with hats. We say nothing. If the kids see us, we'll give a little so they know we're watching, but our goal is to have the kids game be about them, only them. So we
basically say it was really fun watching you play today.
Where do you want to get ice cream?
I coach basketball now. Little shout out to the Revere 10-year-olds. But I'm even coaching it. it's tough to get overly involved. It's their time.
Do you guys have mentors? That's one thing we've been exploring. Like, we hear people that like have mentors and spend time with them, whether it's like on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Is that something that you guys do? What have you found valuable from that? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, we're huge into mentors, and just coaching in general. I mean, if there's anything that we invest in on a daily and all, like, it's really, I'd say, where most of our.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yes. Coaches, not just like physical, we've hired nutritionists, like not to be more, but to learn. Like for us, it's all about learning, because I think it's number one, we're interested in, but we can apply it to everyone else. But I think for me personally, I don't have a specific mentor, but I have people in my life in all areas that can mentor me in one thing, right? Like certainly business, always learning, but like health and parent, like, if someone has older kids than you, like pay attention, right? Like, and I don't necessarily think that you have to have like, you can learn from people screwing up their kids just as much, like, right? Like pay attention. Like, what's going on over there? Ooh, I don't want to do that. Right? Like,
yeah, I would say all those people. I know exactly who you're talking about. I'd consider them mentors.
Yeah, but not just one general, because everyone has their things that they've really mastered, right?
So there's like various levels, like some you're kind of learning through observation, and others can like directly teach. Someone told me just yesterday, and I never thought about this, but they're like, LeBron James has a coach. And I'm like, well, if he has a coach and he's LeBron James, and there's certain things I'm trying to do and I'm nowhere near his level, then, we all can probably benefit.
That example.
We use exactly, we're like, Oprah has a coach, LeBron has a coach, like, no, seriously, but it is true. And from being coaches ourselves and working with people, we have our own coaches, because all of us only have so much bandwidth. And when I spend my time being a mom and running a business and doing my training, I need the support too, just like other people do. I have to go. When you're in your house and you walk over the same pile of laundry 14 times and then you just don't even see it anymore because it's just part of your house. You need those people around you to say, hey, because you're going to get going. We all do it.
I'll point the laundry out. I won't pick it up.
You're coaching.
I tend not to see it the first pass. So
I think that's
a
big step for people, honestly, is admitting that like they do need the help. And it's like, if we can accept, a lot of times it is bandwidth. Like I work with guys, CEOs of like massive companies. They just they could figure it out. I promise you. Like, these are some of the brightest people I've ever met. They can figure out their health for sure, but why would they waste their time doing it? Right? It's like, I can figure out business forever, but why not shortcut it with somebody that's already done that? Right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, when you're in charge of so much, like I like to lead and be in charge, but like when I go to the gym, I want someone to tell me what to do and how long to do it and when to push, because when I decide I don't want to push anymore, like I want to be done. But when you have someone looking at you, telling you it's time to push, then it's go time. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate the time that we've been able to share with you. And we certainly want to wish you good luck in the Olympics. And we'll be watching for you and cheering you on from the television sidelines. So I really wish you the best in your preparation and competition.
What is the latest with that? You said that maybe that they're thinking of having to postpone or push a little further. Is that
a little bit ago, a report came out. It's all over the news, so I'm not saying anything. No, everyone knows it. A report came out saying it was leaked that Japan was basically conceding they couldn't have the Olympics. It was followed up with more reports saying they haven't made that decision. There's obviously still a lot that has to go on, and there will be a decision being made later. So, from our perspective, it could have been true, that report. It could not have been true. We don't know. So we're training like it's a go, and we're going to continue to do that until we're told otherwise.
Kind of like life, just training and moving forward.
There you go. If anyone wants to connect with you or just learn more about you, where can they go?
They can, I have a website, strongmomstrongfam.com, or you can check me out on Instagram and LinkedIn for Lauren Regula, Facebook, Lauren Bay-Regula.
Yeah, same. Facebook, Instagram. It's the way to go.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, thank you guys so much. And it's been a privilege to speak with you, and we wish you the best.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. If I'm being completely honest, I was definitely fangirling before the interview.
You were fangirling during the interview. Pretty hard.
I was a little bit.
I was too, if I could say that as well.
And I know you would never admit that, but I will be honest. Just thinking about, wow, we're going to talk to this couple, both elite athletes, business owners who open their own business, have changed careers, have done these things. And so I'm always like just wide-eyed, and my ears are open, and I want to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to take what I can from these people. And one of the things that I've come away with over the course of the interviews we've done with all of these couples is that although they're extraordinary, they're just like us. I feel like it's like an Us Weekly, and you open it up and it's like, oh, Lindsay Lohan, she's got her coffee. She's just like us, It's kind of that moment.
Uma Thurman, she's at the grocery store.
But
wow, she eats
just
food just like us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so these couples are, extraordinary, but there's a lot that they do that is I wouldn't say that it's ordinary, but there's a lot they do that's accessible to us if we think about it and if we put some of the same intentionality towards it as we see Lauren and Dave doing.
Right. And they do things that are very similar to the way that we do things, like with our family, or with our mindset, or our mentality, or the way that we make room for each other. And so, I want that to give anybody who's listening like permission to be like, well, wow, I couldn't do that because I'm not a 3-time Olympian, or because I don't own my own business. But I think the point is yeah, you're just as extraordinary as she is, but it's in your own domain. It's in your own realm. It's in your own career. And so, I want this interview to inspire you the way that it inspired me. And I want you to be able to find something of value from all of the different things that they spoke on.
Yeah, it was a pretty wide-ranging conversation, and I think there's a lot just to dwell on, and I think any one of the topics that we touched upon could be an entire conversation in and of itself. But there are a few things that definitely stood out to me that I just wanted to share, and that for everything that we bring up here in the conclusion, I think there's twice as many that we are not bringing up here on the recording, but we've certainly talked about this conversation already multiple times, and a lot that I think this couple offered to us that we can grow from. So one of the things that stood out, and you probably heard it in the interview itself, was towards the beginning when we were talking about like training at that Olympic level. Lauren brought up the idea of the mental game, and how you can't physically like out practice someone else that you're competing against. But that's where the mental game comes in, and that kind of opened up this doorway into just like I would say the whole world of the mental game. Not even specific to the Olympics, but the idea that you can train your mind and you can strengthen your mind to whether it's competing or whether it's some other goal that you're pursuing. And just the idea that some of the habits that we've talked about or experimented with are not these habits to support like a weak person who's looking to just get to a functional level. These are really like the habits that your highest performers in any industry worldwide have adopted and use regularly.
I think she referred to it as like the idea of the elite mindset. Mm-hmm. And so even listening to and watching master classes of elite athletes, it doesn't matter what the sport is or what you're training your body to do, where it's more of an elite mindset. Mm-hmm. And that starts with these habits of, you wake up earlier than most people and you accomplish these amount of things. And it's the way you approach things, and it's not specifically what you're doing. It's like the approach and the mindset towards it.
Yeah. And she talked about the visualization as well, and that goes into her competition, but you also heard them bring it up just with the way that they tried to like run and kind of build their family as well. It actually reminded me, do you remember when we were in marching band, and as we were on the bus like driving to the competition, we'd do like a mental run through. Everybody would like sing their parts, or I would drum my parts, and you would kind of mentally like spin your rifle, your flag, and it was silly. But I think even at that young age, we were being inculcated with this idea of like visualizing and like mentally preparing for strength for that moment of execution.
Well, and you're saying it like it was silly, but it actually wasn't. That was like an elite mindset kind of thing. You visualize yourself there what are the motions that you go through, because like your body responds in that way of muscle memory, where it's going to do what it's been trained to do. So it's more like not letting your nerves get the best of you, not letting your anxiety get the best of you, not letting those thoughts that kind of cloud you and distract you get the best of you. And so obviously we were trained by an elite kind of teacher that taught us that it's a mental game.
Yeah, that's why I marching band won state every year. Anyway, so there were a lot of other takeaways. So that's certainly one that we can continue to build off of. And I think it gave us some ideas for like what this year might look like for us, a little bit different just in terms of the mental game. What were some of the things that stood out to you?
I always go back to family. Like, what does family life look like? What does doing family look like? How do we prioritize our spouse? How do we prioritize our family time? And so one of the things that stood out is they talked about making decisions for each other, because obviously Lauren is going to leave for training if the Olympics do happen as they're supposed to after being postponed from last year. And they're saying, oh gosh, Dave, you have to make so many sacrifices to let Lauren go. And he says, I'm not making any sacrifices. He's like, I'm making a decision for my family to let my wife pursue something that she loves. And so even just
it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. An outsider might be like, oh, like you're giving so much, but it's the way they look at it is like, no, this is like just part of how we function and how we roll, and it adds strength to one another.
Well, and I think it's a mindset shift where it's like, oh, you could spin it into this negative tale, but it's really not. He's making a decision for his family, for his wife, to do what she loves. And so I liked framing it in that way, where we think like because we do something we're giving it up or we're sacrificing something, and it's not. It's just a decision to do what you want with your life. And so you don't mind doing that for the person that you love or for your family, because that's what makes sense for you guys. And he talked about, if you love someone, you're going to allow them to see and follow their max potential. Why would you want to keep her back? Like if she is a softball player and she is an Olympic athlete, having kids or being 40 shouldn't stop us from doing the things that we want to do. And so I really liked that.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if you were to hold the other person back or have reservations, it's almost like from your own fears, from maybe like that mindset that it is like, too much for you to sacrifice for that other person to go and spread their wings, or that you're going to lose something between the two of you along the way. So obviously there's a high degree of just regard and trust that's built into the relationship.
Yeah, and respect. And, they talked about, prioritizing obviously each other. There's an instance in there where he talks about, dinner needing to be made, but Lauren really needing to go for a run to kind of clear her mind so that she felt good about her day and just being able to process some things, and him taking that for her. Like, he's going to make dinner and she's going to go for a run because ultimately she'll feel better. They'll all eat and like life is good. And so it's, just these trade-offs of like, let me take something off your plate to make our family run smoother. And when you're happy and I'm happy, the kids are happy, and we're all jiving. And I liked that. And even just the way they talked about scheduling family time, yeah. I kind of like, there's a lot to love about her, but like her saying she's got everything color coded and calendars and writing it in. And
was that your favorite part? Did you?
But I could connect with that. I mean, that's one of the images on one of our blog posts is our family calendar color coordinated. And it's like, here are the things that have to go in. Right? Whether it's training or business related. And then you look at the calendar and you schedule the things that you want to happen. So what are the things that need to happen? And then you get the things that you want to happen on there, so that family time is important and that they are together and that it is a priority. And so, scheduling the things that matter is an episode title for us. And so you kind of see how that plays out in an elite mindset, in a family who cares about each other and wants to see everybody succeed.
Right. And it's one of those things that seems silly. Like, well, if you love your family, you should just already be spending. But no, it doesn't work that way. Like, that's the intentionality that really like makes the most special things take place.
Well, and especially when you have 3 kids at different ages playing different sports, like you're not just, sitting holding hands together. It was easier when the kids are little, but as they start to have their own lives, things shift again. And so you have to make that time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking with our own group, and as they get older too, I think we're gonna need like a huge board just for like the 4 of them and all of their involvements, and then you and I, and like how are we gonna write it all down? Much less color code it.
Well, we're old fashioned and we like the paper calendar. We're gonna have to go fully digital.
I'm looking at a huge whiteboard.
All right. we'll add that on the list of to-dos.
Another thing that stood out, and maybe this is the last one that we'll talk about here, but I know there's many more that we could consider. But this idea of, as Dave was talking about his career change and their decision to move from Chicago to Ohio and open up the gym, it wasn't the first time that we've talked to someone and they've brought up just this feeling towards their work, like it pays the bills, but there's something about it that as you look at just like the long term, if you were to continue in that work for the next 20 or the next 30 years until retirement, that is so unfulfilling that it almost becomes, I'm going to use the word toxic. And I know he doesn't say that in the conversation, but that was the impression that I had, where it's like almost like soul killing to like stay in something that's so unfulfilling, long past its expiration date for you.
Well, and I don't think it's that like, the job, there's nothing wrong with the job itself. So whether we're looking at this interview here or even with a lot of the other couples that we talk about that they make this shift, it's just something inside of them that changes. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking about this with a friend today. It's this notion of who we are at 20 is not who we are at 40. And so you see all of this like around that time between 35 and 45, people are kind of like, it no longer speaks to me. It no longer serves me. I'm not fueled with passion for it. And this realization that then you don't have to stick with it. Mm-hmm. Just because that's where you started doesn't mean that that's where you have to end.
Yeah. And I think it's scary, but it's also admirable too. And they talk about that transition and, if they could do it again, going from his full-time job in Chicago to what they were trying to open up with their gym in Ohio, that, there's a lot to learn from that, but it's, how do you give up the kind of the sure thing, the work that, provides for your family, the insurance that often comes with that, for the risk, for the dream. And, that seemed like, and I know this could have been an entire episode in itself, but it seemed like it was fraught with its own challenges. And, but thankfully, like looking back and now where they're at today, it has kind of the ending that they had in mind and are continuing to build into. But I think that is a good pause for like any listener to look at your career and look at your trajectory and not just think about the short term of like, this is my current work, this is my current income, but also thinking like 20 or 30 years ahead. Like, am I going to end up in the same spot that I'm in right now? How do I feel about that? And is there something that I would miss along the way? And that doesn't mean that we should quit our work and go move somewhere else and to start something new. But it's really good to think through, because I think even just entertaining some of those ideas might lead us to some thoughts that we hadn't considered before.
Well, yeah. And for some people, being able to make a switch like that isn't in the cards for them. But what can you do then that will fulfill you? So maybe your job will always be your job. Mm-hmm. But if you need something that sets your soul on fire or allows you to pursue something that matters to you, maybe it's in a different realm.
Maybe it's a hobby or a side hustle that could, become its own thing for you down the road.
Right. So that it's a smoother transition, it's an easier process, or it's a smaller leap that you're willing to take. That's what they recommend
too. Yeah.
Taking a smaller leap instead of having no safety net. Sure.
Right. So there's a lot more that we can discuss, and certainly this was the type of conversation that there's a lot of elements that came up that I think hit me pretty hard, and I will continue to digest. And I know we'll be talking about as well, and I'm looking forward to that giant whiteboard for us to visualize some of our concepts too.
Yeah. So, like I said, go back to this interview. Go back to some of the ones with the other couples that we've had this season, and start thinking about what's the same. And, what people are realizing and what's helping them move forward. So if you feel like you've been stuck, or especially in this last year, like things just don't feel right anymore, like use this as an opportunity to kind of learn and grow from the people who are taking chances and moving towards something that feels more right for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we genuinely hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as we did, and we enjoyed it a lot. So until next time, thanks for joining us in this episode.
See you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you're encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are two great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
And relentlessly pursuing what matters.